When it comes to games developed with celebrities as the inspiration for the main character, what comes to mind? Terry Crews in Crackdown 3, Norman Reedus in Death Stranding, Keanu Reeves in Cyberpunk 2077, Shaquille O'Neal in Shaq Fu, Samuel L. Jackson in Grand Theft Auto San Andreas, Michael Jackson in Michael Jackson's Moonwalker. There are plenty of games that have brought in famous actors or musicians to boost recognition and, hopefully, sales. Throughout gaming history, there have been successes and failures in this category. Some are truly memorable games, and others that have faded into obscurity. Amid this mix of hits and misses, there's one celebrity-driven game series that exists somewhere between classic and being forgotten, the Onimusha series. Specifically, Onimusha 3, which we're diving into today, shows that a game inspired by a celebrity's image can still deliver top-notch gameplay and an impressive experience. So, who are the two well-known celebrities featured in Onimusha 3? First, we have Takeshi Kaneshiro, a superstar actor from Asia who has been the protagonist since the first game. He plays Samanosuke Akechi. The second is Jean Reno, a renowned European actor who joined in the third installment, portraying Jacques Blanc. But before we get into Onimusha 3, let's give a quick overview of the Onimusha series. The first two games, Onimusha 1 and Onimusha 2, featured a combination of 2D backgrounds and 3D characters. On the more powerful PS2 platform, this style was pretty rare. Like, who would ever do something like that? Oh right, never mind. But that was on the PS1. On the PS2, you'd think they'd move away from 2D backgrounds, especially for a big production like this. Did you know that the Onimusha series, initially conceived as an action game, was actually derived from Resident Evil? The original idea was to create a game set in Japan's Sengoku era, featuring ninjas and zombies. However, the final product felt more like a blend of samurai and zombies, or monsters and demons. The original Onimusha debuted on January 25th, 2001 for the PlayStation 2 and became the first PS2 game to surpass 1 million units sold. Later installments include Onimusha 2, Onimusha 3, and Onimusha Dawn of Dreams, along with several spin-offs. In September 2022, Netflix even announced the first animated adaptation of Onimusha. Beyond the PlayStation platform, Onimusha has also appeared on GBA, Onimusha Tactics, Mobile, Onimusha Karakuri Gamer Castle, and other games like Shin Onimusha Curtain of Darkness and Onimusha Soul. Clearly, the series was quite popular, and Capcom took it seriously. After all, as of June 2023, the series had sold 8.6 million copies worldwide, making it Capcom's 10th best-selling franchise. Story-wise, the game kicks off during Japan's Sengoku period, with a war against Oda Nobunaga. After being killed by Samanosuke, Nobunaga makes a pact with the Genma King, returning to life with demonic power. Samanosuke, unable to fight the Genma, is revived by the Oni clan and granted the power to combat them. In the second game, however, the protagonist changes to Jubei Yagyu. After witnessing his village's massacre at the hands of Nobunaga, Jubei, driven by vengeance, discovers his Oni heritage and joins the fight against Nobunaga, ultimately defeating him. Yet Nobunaga's soul escapes and is reborn, leading to the events of Onimusha 3. But why is it that when people think of classic PS2 action games, the Onimusha series, including Onimusha 3, the only true 3D mainline sequel on the platform, since Dawn of Dreams and Onimusha Blade Warriors aren't part of the main storyline, isn't exactly at the top of their list? Personally, I'd say it's partly because of the game's pace. For an action game, it includes a lot of puzzle elements and a kind of fight, pause, fight rhythm that makes the combat, aside from the instant counter mechanic, which we'll discuss later, feel somewhat underwhelming. Not bad, but certainly with room for improvement. Character development could also have been better, especially for Jacques, the second protagonist in Onimusha 3, whose backstory felt a bit shallow despite being based on Jean Reno. Jean Reno, man, then Jean Reno. Additionally, the fixed camera angle often made it hard to see enemies behind you. Reports suggest that the Onimusha series didn't sell particularly well in Europe either, which may explain why it isn't always remembered among the PS2 classics. Alright, enough of the background info. Let's dive into Onimusha 3 and see what kind of experience it has to offer. The game kicks off in Paris, France on May 8, 2004. Here we meet one of our protagonists, Jacques, a character modeled after the French actor Jean Reno. Not only does he look like Jean Reno, but Jean Reno also performed his French voice acting.
Henri, tu dors encore. Lève-toi vite, sinon tu vas être en retard à l'école.
In the opening cutscene, Jacques is talking to his son Henri on the phone, but their conversation gets interrupted by a voice coming through his radio. Someone named Philippe is calling for Jacques, seemingly asking for help. After taking off his sunglasses and hopping on his bike, Jacques rides off to the other side of the radio. Next, we get a cutscene depicting a sudden disaster in Paris. The Genma, originally seen only in 1500s Japan, suddenly appear in modern-day Paris, wreaking havoc and slaughtering innocent people. Paris quickly becomes a nightmare. The Genma are the main antagonists in the Onimusha series, but up until now, they had only shown up in Japan. After the cutscene, we jump back to Tensho Year 10, which is June 2nd, 1582, to Kyoto, Japan. Here, we see a group of samurai, led by a man named Mitsuhide Akechi. Mitsuhide hands over a set of equipment to our other main protagonist, Hidemitsu Samanosuke Akechi. This equipment is none other than the Oni Gauntlet, one of the most important tools for fighting the Genma. Since the first game, it's been established that only those equipped with the Oni Gauntlet or those with Oni blood can take on the Genma. The Oni Gauntlet contains a dragon's orb and grants the wielder the power to use various dragon orbs. These orbs give the wielder access to different weapons, each with unique forms and elemental powers, making it a powerful tool for wielding Oni abilities. The Gauntlet also enables its user to have the ability to kill Genma, and in critical moments, even transform into an Oni or Ghost Fighter, either automatically upon death or manually by gathering 5 special soul orbs. Perhaps most importantly, the Oni Gauntlet can absorb soul energy released from dead Genma, which is crucial in the game for upgrading weapons and recovering health. After receiving the Oni Gauntlet, the samurai army opens the gates of Honnoji Temple and charges towards the game's main boss, Oda Nobunaga, who has allied himself with the Genma and gained demonic powers. Now back to the actual gameplay. The first area introduces just a few low-level enemies, mainly to help players get comfortable with the controls. Once they're taken down, you head up the stairs. And by the way, those enemy archers are super annoying. After fighting off some more enemies, you will reach a platform below Honnoji Temple, where we meet the first tough enemy, a Gore, a lesser demon wielding a massive steel mace. If you're still getting used to the controls, you'll probably die here a few times. After defeating this hefty beast, we encounter our first protective mirror, which serves as a save point. It also allows us to enter training mode and upgrade our weapons and gear. Always remember to save, and trust me, after dying a few times, you'll understand why. Open the chest nearby to grab the Honnoji Temple map, though honestly, we probably won't need it anymore. It is just there. Head up the stairs, deal with another Gore at the gate, and enter Honnoji Temple. Inside the temple, besides the Genma corrupted Nobunaga, there's someone else. Mori Ranmaru, Nobunaga's loyal general. Out of sheer loyalty, Ranmaru begs Nobunaga to let him kill Samanosuke in his place. Thus, our first duel begins. As the first mini-boss, or let's say, a slightly tougher enemy, Ranmaru isn't too difficult to defeat, but this won't be the last time we face him. He'll be back later in the game, and trust me, he's going to be a major pain in the ass. After beating Ranmaru, it's time to go head-to-head with Nobunaga himself. Just when Nobunaga's about to finish Samanosuke off, a strange glowing sphere appears, enveloping Samanosuke and suddenly transporting him away. Where did Samanosuke end up, and what on earth just happened? Well, the game doesn't exactly explain it right away. Instead, we shift scenes to modern-day Paris, where we see the French military, or armed police, trying to fight off the Genma. Unfortunately, since ordinary people have no way of actually killing Genma, it's mostly a one-sided massacre. The humans are completely powerless against these monsters. Just when it looks like one squad leader is about to meet his end, Jacques shows up, launching himself off his motorcycle to assist.
Jacques!
Now we get to control Jacques, who is armed with a P90. Being able to shoot from a distance makes firearms a lot safer for killing enemies, something that will become very clear when we use another gun-wielding character later in the game. After taking down the Genma in front of them, we learn that this squad leader is named Philippe, the same guy who was calling Jacques on the radio at the beginning of the game. With Jacques supporting Philippe, the two keep battling the Genma when suddenly a mysterious glowing sphere appears behind them. Out steps none other than Samanosuke, looking as bewildered as ever. He takes out a few Genma effortlessly, but since he's speaking Japanese, or maybe English in our case, and Jacques is speaking French, they can't communicate.
Un samouraï?
You, where are we?
Mais qui es-tu?
What is that?
D'où tu viens?
Samanosuke decides to leave and explore on his own. That's when the sphere reappears, this time enveloping Jacques and Philippe, transporting them away. Confused, Samanosuke picks up Jacques' dropped phone, and when he looks up, he spots a familiar figure standing atop the Arc de Triomphe. Who could it be? Well, we'll find out later. Stuck in a foreign land and with no way to return to his own time, Samanosuke decides to press on. He heads into the subway, makes his way through some underground passages, and eventually reaches one of Paris' landmarks, the Arc de Triomphe. Here, we encounter our first flying enemies, the Barca. They're easy enough to take down with a bow, but there's a catch. The game doesn't actually tell you which button to use the bow. You have to check the control settings yourself. Typical good old game design at its finest. After defeating the flying enemies and grabbing the Arc de Triomphe map, we open the gate leading underground and down there find our first special elemental weapon, the Tenso. Each of these elemental weapons is crucial, so if you can, level up each one to max. Coming back up, Samanosuke is surrounded by the French army, or armed police, but since they don't understand each other, there's a lot of awkward tension.
Les mains en l'air.
Luckily, they somehow decide Samanosuke isn't their enemy. The army's objective is to fight Genma inside the Arc de Triomphe, but once inside, they get picked off one by one, including the female squad leader, who ends up knocked out by the Genma. This is where we face a new type of Genma, the Zagat. After taking them down, we carry the unconscious female squad leader outside before heading back into the Arc alone. Ascending the spiral staircase, we use the observation key to enter the art showroom. Inside, there's a locked puzzle chest. These kinds of chests will appear often throughout the game, holding valuable items. If you don't want to deal with the headache puzzle solving, well, there's always Google. After killing the enemies, saving at the mirror, we make it to the top of the Arc de Triomphe, and here we face our first real boss fight. A cutscene introduces us to a skeletal figure holding a staff, someone we saw earlier who looks like he belongs in the Alien series. His name is Guildenstern. He said that it's because of his invention that Samanosuke is now caught up in this whole time travel mess.
So this is all you're doing?
And now, just calm down. Maggot.
Where are we?
Where? We're in Paris, France. But more importantly, we're in Paris 500 years after your age of warring states.
What?
Without saying much else, Guildenstern summons a huge robot called Brainstorm to fight us, and then vanishes. As the first boss, Brainstorm isn't too hard to handle, but still need to be careful if you are still learning the game. Just keep your distance, hit with magic attacks, and when your magic meter runs out, switch to a hit and run tactic. Before long, he's down. After that boss, we switch back to Jacques and Philippe. They've been transported to a forest, and by now, you probably figured it out. They've swapped time periods and are now in feudal Japan. Sure, this kind of time swap plot is pretty cliche nowadays, but back then it was a neat twist. Philippe unfortunately is badly injured and soon dies. After saying a final goodbye to his old friend, Jacques presses on alone. Suddenly, he spots his son, Henri, being attacked by a monster. Jacques immediately tries to fight back with his handgun, but it runs out of bullets, and they seem useless against the creature. That's when some strange lights appears in his right hand. The Oni gauntlet and the Oni whip are bestowed upon him.
Qu'est-ce qui est arrivé à mon bras?
Using this newfound power, Jacques defeats the monster. Then, a glowing figure appears, telling Jacques that his son is safe in modern-day Paris, and what he saw was just an illusion. The figure also explains that it was he who gave Jacques the Oni power, and now Jacques must help the Samanosuke of this era defeat Nobunaga if he ever wants to return home. He then calls out Akko, a little Tengu sprite who's going to serve as our translator, turning all languages into English, so everyone can magically communicate.
What's going on? I can understand you.
Oh, it's my power!
Yeah, it's funny how everyone in every universe just happens to end up speaking English. But Akko's powers don't stop there. She can also grab items from Tengu chests that are out of reach. Akko also has her own collection of vests, each with a special ability, which you'll unlock as the game progresses. Plus, collecting these vests is crucial for unlocking the true ending. With Akko by his side, Jacques presses on and eventually finds this era's Samanosuke at an old temple. After a bit of dialogue, Jacques realizes the hard truths. If he wants to get back to his own time, he has to defeat the Genma. The two agree to form an alliance and begin their trek up the mountain. At the top, they need to find an item to activate a strange tower, so they split up for now. On the cliffside, Jacques discovers that he can use his Oni whip to latch onto Oni fireflies and traverse large gaps. It is funny that everything is Oni this, Oni that. Eventually, he finds the bronze mirror on a scaffold along the cliffside. Returning to the tower, he used the bronze mirror, causing the tower to retract, and from the tower, Jacques gets his first special weapon, Enja. With Enja, Jacques can now destroy the blood-sucking plants that blocked his path before. Heading down, he finds the gate on his way is locked, so he returns to where the blood-sucking plants were, kills the plants, collects the key, go back, and unlocks the gate. There, Samanosuke is already waiting. Together, they proceed into the temple, where they find this era's Ranmaru. Ranmaru tells them that Nobunaga is already aware of the resistance, and summons the boss for this area before leaving. This time, Samanosuke gives chase, leaving Jacques alone to deal with the boss. Here's a key mechanic I haven't mentioned yet, that is Isen. It's performed by pressing the attack button right before an enemy hits you, with each enemy having a specific point during their attack for the Isen to trigger. Then there's Hachiki Isen, which involves first deflecting an attack, and then pressing the attack button right after. It's easier than a regular Isen, but still takes some practice. These techniques are must-haves, or at least good to be familiar with. Whether it's a boss or a tough enemy, mastering Isen and Hachiki Isen can make fights a breeze. Honestly, I struggled a lot during some boss fights, dying over and over until I finally somewhat familiar with the Isen, but this boss isn't too bad. Once his shield is destroyed, he's easy to finish off. After defeating the boss, Akko mentions that she can freely travel through time, so she heads to modern-day Paris. What a versatile translator she is, wow. Back in Paris, Akko used her power to translate Japanese and French into English, again allowing Samanosuke to communicate with the female squad leader, who we learn is named Michelle, Jacques' fiancée. She's kinda, hot? For a squad leader, I should say. Also, side note, Akko's voice acting here is pretty weird.
Wow, so you're Jacques' fiancé? Oh, Jacques, you W.
Yes.
With nowhere else to go, Samanosuke decides to help Michelle fight the Gainma in this era, so they head down into the sewers to rescue her squad mates first. Down in the sewers, one of Michelle's squad member doesn't make it, and now our goal is to make it through the sewer and regroup with the others. This part is where the game really starts to flex its puzzle-solving muscles for the first time. It's an interesting blend of action and puzzle elements simultaneously, but whether this approach is good or not, well, that's not an easy question to answer in just a few words. We also encounter a new type of Gainma called Zolworm. This thing splits into smaller critters called Gera when you kill it. Once you get used to its attack patterns, it's not too difficult to handle. After that, we activate a generator, lower a bridge, and towards the end of the sewer, we drop a big iron ball to clear out a section blocked by debris so we can move forward. Keep good forward and kill some more Genma. At the point where the sewer connects to the surface, they find a still living member of the French Special Forces, or Armed Police. So the speed which this guy accepts Samanosuke's presence is a little too quick.
Who's this joker?
A Japanese samurai. He's a real-life Ghostbuster.
Oh, excuse me. Well, you saved my life. I owe you my thanks.
Yeah, just some monster hunter from 500 years ago, no big deal at all. Once they emerge from the sewer, they arrive at Notre Dame. All of a sudden, Jacques' lost phone rings. It's Henri, Jacques' son. The group decides to head over to Jacques' apartment to explain what's going on to Henri.
Who is he?
This is Mr. Samanosuke. He's a samurai from Japan.
Serious?
After that, Ako says she needs to return to feudal Japan to help Jacques out. Back in Japan, Jacques finds a modern wristwatch inside the temple. Following Samanosuke's lead, they head to Sakai City to look for more clues. Although it's called city, it looks more like a village. The two split up again to search for the Genma. Jacques first finds a map, then heads into a shop named Toraya. Inside, he asks the shopkeeper if he's seen the watch. But the guy, looking visibly nervous, says nothing and kicks him out. Next to the shop, there's a kid who says there's something in a jar, but that he'll only trade it for something sweet. How about I give you a little sweet ass whipping? But since we can't use violence here, Jacques has to find something sweet for him. After exploring a bit, Jacques finds a watermelon and trades it for whatever's in the jar. Turns out it's an Oni firefly, just what we need to get to the shop's second floor. Upstairs, Jacques overhears the shopkeeper planning a deal with some foreigners down by the docks, and also finds a key. Exiting the shop, Jacques then heads to the blacksmith and picks up another special weapon, resin. This one's my personal favorite, quick, agile, and with a decent reach. After leaving the blacksmith, Jacques fights his way down to the dock, where he used the newly obtained elemental weapon to open a door covered with an elemental attachment, inside which he finds an time-lapse one, in which Guildenstern writes about his time travel experiments. Samanosuke also shows up here, mentioning that a ship just docked at the pier. When Jacques shows Samanosuke the research log, Samanosuke reveals that Guildenstern is a Genma scientist responsible for creating new types of Genma. As Jacques and Samanosuke heads to the ship, Jacques finds that his motorcycle from modern-day Paris is also here in feudal Japan. Ridiculous, right?
What is it, Jacques?
My bike.
Then, a man named Heihachiro Honda shows up. We learn that he's somehow connected to Nobunaga, but more details on that come later. Once Heihachiro realizes that Jacques' companion is Samanosuke, he insists on dueling him, so begins a new boss fight. Honestly, this is one of the easiest boss battles in the game, plus it's a 2-on-1, so I managed to win without dying. After a quick fight, Heihachiro suddenly stops and leaves. Just then, the ship is about to depart. Back in modern-day Paris, Jacques' son Henri suddenly has his chosen one moment, realizing his dad needs his motorcycle keys. What the flying f***? He grabs them, ready to deliver them to his father by God knows how. Ako, ever the hero, offers to take them to feudal Japan. Back in Japan, keys in hand, Jacques fires up his motorcycle and pulls off a Hollywood-style stunt, leaping onto the ship as it sets sail. On board, Jacques enters the ship's cabin, where he finds a treasure chest containing a creature called Gajimalo. What a name! This grotesque critter is a manifestation of a grudge, formed when Genma blood spilled on a young girl's doll during a battle. When attacked, Gajimalo drops healing souls, but it also fights back, just not that much damage. After acquiring the ship's log, and just as Jacques is about to leave the ship, it suddenly submerges, submarine style, and starts heading underwater. Realizing this ship will likely lead him to a Genma hideout, Jacques tells Ako to head back to the present time and deliver some messages to his son and Michel. At this point, Ako feels less like a magical sprite and more like a high-ping phone call.
Oh, Jacques, you W!
Back in modern-day Paris, Ako explains the situation to Michel and Henri. Just then, a call comes through on Jacques' phone. Samanosuke picks up, and it's Guildenstern on the other end, instructing him to head to the basement of Notre Dame. How did Guildenstern get Jacques' number? What a pervert. Anyway, Samanosuke heads off to Notre Dame alone. Inside, after dealing with some enemies, Samanosuke unlocks the path to the basement. This basement is not your typical church cellar. It's a corridor made of bones and flesh, complete with spinning blades. After dodging the blades and pressing a skeletal button, another door opens, leading to a crossroads. To the left is an elemental door that requires air power to open. To the right is a pit too deep to descend. Both paths are effectively dead ends. It's easy to get stuck here. What we're supposed to do is return to the surface part of Notre Dame. There, on the left and right side of the church, are two statues, 4 in total, each shrouded in a dark mist. At each statue are 4 lamps, and we need to absorb the mist from the statues in the order of the number of lit lamps, starting with 1. Once all the mist is absorbed, the statue on the left side that holds an orb begins to glow. Interacting with it grants us a new weapon imbued with air power, the Kuga. Armed with the Kuga, Samanosuke returns to the basement and opens the door that required air power. Inside, he finds a rope ladder. I think we all know what comes next. Returning to the pit, he used the ladder to climb down, opens a chest, and gets the gold skull. Heading to the door with 2 skull slots, Samanosuke inserts the 3rd skull to unlock the final door. Inside, Guildenstern proudly shows off his latest creation to Samanosuke, the time folder. Then, like the little pussy he is, Guildenstern summons 2 Ginma called Dodo before running away using the time folder. These Dodo are the boss of this area, but they're also common enemies in the late game, so it's worth learning how to fight them effectively. After defeating them, Samanosuke used the time folder to head to the undersea temple. At the undersea temple, Akko realizes that the ship nearby is the same one Jacques boarded earlier. Akko tries to warp back to feudal Japan, but finds herself unable to travel through time freely anymore, so she decides to stick with Samanosuke to continue exploring. Now, let me just say, this part of the game, the Undersea Temple, is probably the most headache-inducing section in the entire experience. This level has a lot of puzzles and not much combat, and it also involves repeatedly traveling between time periods. From a game design perspective, it's quite brilliant, but from a player's perspective, it's a drag, a real slog. It's my least favorite part, at least personally speaking. Heading through the left door, we arrive at a circular room. Here, we find a new device, the mini time folder. Its function is to let Akko travel through time, essentially building a bridge between Jacques in the past and Samanosuke in the present. This is key to solving the puzzles in this and the later sections. Continuing, Samanosuke picks up a yellow disc around the flames on the right side pillar and sends it through the time folder to Jacques in the past. Akko heads back to feudal Japan, informing Jacques that Samanosuke is in the same place but in the present day. Jacques concludes, the past and present are connected in some way perhaps. In the past's circular room, Jacques uses the yellow disc to unlock the door on the right. Inside, he heads up a set of stairs, enters the room, and finds Research Log 2. He also encounters Ranmalu, who informs him that Guildenstern is constructing an unfinished time machine in the area, but doesn't disclose the exact location. After Ranmalu leaves, Jacques fights off some enemies, takes an elevator to the upper level, and solves a book puzzle. Go inside the bookshelf door on the left side of the passage, we encounter the game's first Dark Realm. Entering the Dark Realm isn't required, but sometimes completing it grants rare items or items that are important to the game's ending. Fair warning, the Dark Realm is extremely tough, so you'll want to be well versed in Isen before taking it on. At the center of the passage, there's an Earth Elemental door that we can't open just yet. On the right side of the passage, we release an Oni Firefly from a chest. Using the Oni Firefly, we reach an upper platform and grab the dragon horn from a chest. Then it's backtracking time. Taking the elevator back down, the armor on the floor from earlier suddenly comes to life, transforming into a monster called Dark Marionette. After defeating it, we head outside and insert the dragon horn into a door missing one horn. Turning the lever causes the water level of the undersea temple to drop, and Akko wonders aloud if the same thing might have happened in the present day.
If time is linking together in our time, the same thing might be happening in Samanosuke's time.
You may be right.
This kind of interaction between past and present is a brilliant design concept. But again, honestly, there are so many such interactions in this level that what starts off as clever quickly turns into a chore. After the water level drops, Jacques makes his way back to the circular room. Akko used the time folder to return to the present day, and Samanosuke moves through the now accessible door on the right to discover that the water has indeed drained, allowing him to pass. Come to the room which Jacques was in just now. The room looks similar to what Jacques encountered in the past, but with an added sense of ruin from the centuries in between. Inside, Samanosuke picks up a blue disc, but then Guildenstern and Ranmalu both appear. Guildenstern taunts our hero before disappearing, leaving us to fight a Genma power-enhanced Ranmalu. This fight is challenging. Ranmalu is faster, more powerful, and more evasive, making it one of the more demanding boss battles in the game. To beat him, you'll need not only skill, but also, let's be real here, some luck as well. After a tough battle, Ranmalu escapes in front of us rather than get killed. Back in the circular room, Samanosuke used the blue disc on the left pillar, which is emitting blue-purple flames, raising a set of stairs to the door on the left. Inside, we find a glass underwater tunnel that we need to sprint through as fast as possible, since the glass shatters behind us, letting in a torrent of seawater. Through the door ahead, inside, there's another door that's missing a dragon's right horn, and a room on the left side with an ice elemental door we can't open yet. Heading upstairs, we smash a chest and find the dragon's right horn, which we then bring back and insert into the door. This raises the barriers over the shattered glass tunnel, making it safe to cross. Heading through the underwater tunnel back to the circular room, Samanosuke takes the blue disc and sends it to Jacques in the past. Jacques takes the blue disc and uses it in the circular room to unlock a door. He heads through the underwater tunnel to the elemental door that Samanosuke couldn't open in the present. Unlike the present, the past version of the room is powered up and looks lively. Upstairs, Jacques finds the collapsed staircase that Samanosuke couldn't pass earlier, but with the help of an Oni Firefly, he reaches the upper platform and claims his final special weapon, Hyosai. Using Hyosai, Jacques opens the elemental door we couldn't access before. Inside are traps made up of wildly moving cylinders. There's a grounded Oni Firefly in there, and we need to figure out how to get it flying again. Returning to the present, Samanosuke enters the room Jacques unlocked in the past, where the trap has decayed, making it easy to reach the front. Here, we find the firefly wings. Backtracking yet again to the circular room, Samanosuke sends the wings through the time folder to Jacques. Jacques then returns to the trap-filled room, equips the grounded firefly with wings, and uses the new flying Oni firefly to bypass the traps and reach the end, where he deactivates the traps and claims a power crystal. Heading out, Jacques finds Heihachi, who was once an enemy, now fighting the Genma. Back at the circular room, Jacques sends the power crystal to Samanosuke. And this is where things get tedious. The constant back and forth of these puzzles, while novel in concept, really starts to get tired of. If the puzzles had been a bit simpler and there had been more thrilling combat, the experience would have felt more natural and enjoyable, don't you think? Anyway, with the power crystal in hand, Samanosuke heads to the left door of the circular room, absorbs the dark energy from it, and gains access to the underwater passage once again. Returning to the trap-filled room, he inserts the power crystal, causing the traps in the present to activate. This room is still manageable to cross. Timing is key here. Once through, he takes an elevator to the underground, where he finds his final special weapon, Chigo. Remember that Earth's elemental door we couldn't open before? Yeah, Chigo's the key to that door. So we have to backtrack all the way there. By now, I've mostly given up fighting enemies along the way, because the repetition is way too much. At the door, we face a beefed up version of the Gore called Dongor. Though not a boss, it's a pretty tough fight, especially given the cramped space. After defeating Dongor, Samanosuke uses his new weapon to unlock the door and finds a red disc inside. Once again, yes, again. We head back to the circular room and send the red disc to Jacques. He puts it into the pillar with red flames, opening the final door. Inside, we meet the Undersea Temple's boss, Gertrude, a massive two-headed dog with high HP and heavy attacks. Gertrude can shoot both lightning and ice and use body slams and swipes to cause some high damages. If you haven't mastered Ethan at this point, this fight is going to be a long, frustrating slog. Eventually, Gertrude is defeated, and with its death, the glass shatters, letting seawater pour in. Jacques and Akko sprint for their lives, and just in time, they jump aboard a Genma train and make their escape from the undersea temple. On the train, Jacques asks Akko to check on Samanosuke and how is he doing. Back in the present, after hearing what happened in the past, Samanosuke and Akko wants to find the Genma train as well. They notice the red door is now open. Inside, instead of a Genma guard dog, they find the Genma enhanced Ranmaru again. After a tough fight, Samanosuke gets hit by a beam from the ceiling. Ranmaru suggests that the light might turn Samanosuke into a Genma as well, but instead, Samanosuke suddenly disappears, leaving Akko all alone. Back in modern-day Paris with Henri and Michel, Henri, worried about Samanosuke, insists on finding him and runs off. Michel, left with no choice, follows him. She heads to Notre Dame, figuring it's the most likely place Henri would go. From here, we get to control Michel. And let me tell you, after using melee weapons for so long, this section feels like a breath of fresh air. Michel used guns, and honestly, it's a blast. Her shotgun is not only powerful, but also has a long-range advantage. And believe it or not, she can perform Isen with her gun. Wait, what? Isen with a shotgun. Absolutely bonkers. Outside Notre Dame, Michel finds a soul bracelet, which can let her absorb enemies' souls like Oni Gauntlet does. Inside the church, much like the time Samanosuke was here, Michel makes her way down to the basement where the time folder is. Suddenly, two dodo appear and smash open a previously inaccessible room. Inside, Michel finds the Paris report. It reveals that the Genma plan to use animals from the zoo and turn them into Genma. At that moment, Akko appears, telling Michel that Samanosuke has been captured. Michel somehow instinctively knows that both Henri and Samanosuke are being held at the zoo, though her reasoning is beyond me. Cut to Henri and Samanosuke, who are shown being held in some sort of prison. Switching back to Michel, she follows the lead to Boulogne Zoo. Deep inside the zoo, we hear something thrashing against a cage before breaking free. Meet Zemo, a Genma monkey hybrid created by Guildenstern. Zemo is probably the toughest regular enemy in the game. High HP, strong attacks, and quick movements make it a serious pain in the butt. But with Michel's long-range shotgun, this fight becomes way easier than it should. Heading down to a riverside boat, Michel finds she needs a key to operate it. Returning to the upper level, she crosses a bridge where there are even more Zemo around every corner. After taking them down, she enters a room to the right with two more Zemo. There's also an elemental door with two attachments that can't be opened just yet. Exiting through the back door and fighting through more enemies, Michel eventually reaches a circular building. Let me tell you, by now I've developed a real fear of circular structures. Inside, Michel descends via ladder and needs to pull the correct levers to lower devices from above. The correct ones are the second and fourth handles. One grants the boat key, while the other gives Michel a new weapon, the SPS-15+R rifle. The other chests are just enemies, so it's better to avoid them. Personally, I don't find the rifle as effective as the shotgun. Sure, it has better range, but it lacks the raw stopping power of the shotgun, which is crucial for crowd control. Michel heads back to the boat, uses the key, and sets off. On board, she opens up to Akko about Henri's past, how his mother died in a car accident, and how Henri blamed himself for it, refusing to accept a new mother figure. Suddenly, the boat is attacked by Genma, causing it to stop. After taking care of the monster, Michel fixes the boat using the oldest trick in the book, a good kick. And they're back in action. When they finally arrive at the zoo's research facility, it looks like Guildenstern has given it quite the Genma makeover. Seriously, just look at those posters. Lovely nightmare fuel. After killing the plants blocking the door to the basement, Michel and Akko head downstairs to the research area. Here, Michel finds Henri and Samanosuke locked up in cages. Before freeing them, we need to defeat several Zmo. After dealing with them, Michel finds an SPS-15+G grenade launcher in one of the cages. But personally, I still prefer the default shotgun. With the power turned off, the cell doors open, and Henri and Samanosuke are finally free. As Henri runs to Michel for a hug, Guildenstern pulls a Houdini move, just appears out of nowhere and snatches them both away right in front of Samanosuke.
Wait!
Picking up Michel's dropped soul bracelet, Samanosuke fights his way out of the research facility and uses the boat to return to the main zoo area. This place is crawling with bazu, which are great for practicing Isen, so definitely don't skip this opportunity. When controlling Samanosuke, you really start to appreciate how much easier it was to fight small with a gun. Using a sword means you need better awareness, quick reflexes, and solid Isen skills. Back at the elemental door room, Samanosuke kills 2 Phobra on the ground. To open the door, we need to use the Kuga, but here's the catch. It has to be at least level 2 Kuga instead of level 1. Since I hadn't upgraded Kuga to level 2, I have to go back to grinding enemies to collect more souls. Thankfully, enemies respawn when you leave and return to an area. So after what felt like forever, I finally leveled up Kuga to level 2. With the upgraded Kuga, Samanosuke returns to the door, unlocks the door, and inside finds the lab building key. So let's back to the boat and head to the research area again. The constant back and forth really starts to get old fast, but this is one of the core elements of the Onimusha series, what I like to call combat puzzling. At the lab, Samanosuke kills a Dodeco on the first floor and uses the key to unlock the lab's main door, revealing a rundown Genma lab filled with basu. After clearing them out, save the game at the save point, and just beyond it is the boss of this area, the Guildenstern himself. In the boss room, Guildenstern is preparing some kind of experiment on Henri and Michel. He is acting, let's say, a bit weird. Seriously, somebody call the FBI.
How I love children.
FBI, open up!
Their organs are so fresh and soft.
Stop!
Guildenstern talks big about ending Samanosuke himself, but instead summons 2 undead armored Genma warriors called Neurophobra. These guys can't be killed. They only get temporarily dismantled, and their attacks are similar to Guildenstern's, using Genma projectiles for long-range strikes. Fighting Guildenstern isn't particularly hard, but it is annoying. The only way to hit him while he's floating is to shoot him with arrows, and once he comes down, you can go in for melee attacks. You can also try to use Isen on the Neurophobra and chain that into an attack on Guildenstern, but I cannot do that, since I suck at Isen. As Guildenstern is almost defeated by us, he will try to rewind time to heal himself, but with persistence, we eventually beat him. With his last breath, Guildenstern reveals that the time machine is complete and that his death doesn't matter now. Henri and Michel are then lowered from the ceiling, finally free. In the lab, they find some kind of blueprint left behind by Guildenstern with Mont-Saint-Michel marked on it. I don't know why villains always leave the most crucial clues behind. He's practically doing the heroes a favor here. Believing the time machine is at Mont-Saint-Michel, the group sets off for the site by car. On their way to Mont-Saint-Michel, Akko decides to go check on Jacques. She arrives in feudal Japan and asks Jacques for a keepsake of his late wife. Jacques hands Akko a ring that his late wife used to wear. With the ring in hand, Akko returns to the present and gives it to Henri. She then uses her power to let Henri communicate with his dead mother through the keepsake. Apparently, Akko can allow the living to talk to the dead if they have something that belonged to the dead person. During the conversation, Henri's mom tells him not to blame himself for her death and to live happily. This emotional exchange helps Henri let go of his burden, and he breaks down in tears in the car. At this point, Mont-Saint-Michel finally appears in the distance, looking absolutely gorgeous. What a fine texture. As they arrive in front of the castle, Samanosuke tells Henri and Michel to stay put while he goes in alone to investigate. Inside, Samanosuke finds Ranmalu's book. The door to the left is locked by a device with a symbol of the sun, so we can't open it yet. After dealing with enemies, Samanosuke checks the door ahead, only to find that it's also locked. Now it's time for Akko to head back to the past and catch up with Jacques. In the past, the train Jacques was riding also stops at Mont-Saint-Michel 500 years ago. Stepping off the train, Jacques runs into Heihachi once again. Just as Heihachi is about to say something, he spots a woman on the upper level and suddenly Heihachi begins attacking Jacques. This is a small boss fight, and Heihachi is fairly easy to defeat. After the fight, the woman jumps down, and she's kinda, big. She tells Heihachi to finish off Jacques, but Heihachi refuses to take orders and leaves. She calls Heihachi human, revealing that she is indeed a Genma.
Well, I can't keep up.
Yeah, I get you, Jacques. I can't keep up with all this either. After she chases after Heihachi, Jacques heads up the stairs. The door at the top of the stairs is locked, but there is someone visible inside. Using the Oni firefly above the door, Jacques makes it to the upper platform of the castle. Through the door on the wall inside, Jacques picks up a map of Mont-Saint-Michel and notices a gate-like trap in the center of the room. Exiting through the other side, he used an Oni firefly to reach a larger platform to the right. Here, Jacques can save a worker-like NPC by defeating some enemies. Returning to the platform, Jacques enters the room with the gate trap, using Ainja's special attack to light the torch in front of the gate, carefully timing it so that the gate stops at the top. From the chest inside the trap, Jacques gets the main gate key. By lighting the torches inside, we can then leave the room. Returning to the large platform, Jacques pulls the handle for the main gate, revealing a missing gear in the mechanism next to the gate. Jacques hands the main gate key to Akko, who then transports it to Samanosuke. Controlling Samanosuke, we fight through the corridor filled with enemies, eventually using the main gate key to unlock the door at the end. Inside, we encounter a new enemy, Genma Mage. These guys float in the air and have two types of magic ring attacks, white to bind and red to damage. They aren't particularly strong, but they're very annoying with their evasive moves and constant magic attacks. After defeating the enemies and picking up the map, Samanosuke proceeds through the door, reaching a long hallway. There's a door midway that's too high to reach, so Samanosuke keeps moving forward. At the end, there's a plant similar to the ones found in the zoo research area. Defeating it allows Samanosuke to pick up the sun crest from a chest behind it. Time to backtrack to the sun-marked door, but be warned, the enemies on this road are tough, so save whenever possible. Once at the door, Samanosuke uses the sun crest to open it. Inside, on the rooftop platform, he finds a chest containing the red eye stone, which he then sends to Jacques. Switching back to Jacques, entering the hallway door in the front. On the right side, or maybe the left, it depends on your perspective, there's a puzzle. To activate it, Jacques inserts the red eye stone into the nearby statue. The puzzle requires Jacques to step on tiles in the correct sun-moon-star order. Mess up and Jacques will get knocked off the platform and loses health. But overall, it's not too difficult. Completing the puzzle 3 times raises stairs from the lower area below, allowing Jacques to proceed. Heading down the stairs, the first door on the left is a dark realm entrance, which we'll come back to later. Further down is a gate that needs a key. Smashing the crate next to the main iron gate releases 2 Oni fireflies. Jacques used them to reach the upper level, jumping from a wall-mounted door and defeating a plant Genma guarding a locked red door. This game has more locked doors than Silent Hill. Backtracking, Jacques heads to the lowest door, exiting to the platform where Samanosuke fought earlier. After defeating a bunch of enemies, Jacques smashes a crate to release an Oni firefly, which he uses to reach the top of the castle and grab an Akko vest. At this point, Jacques has done everything he can, so we switch back to Samanosuke and return to the platform in the castle. Since the stairs have now been raised, Samanosuke can access previously unreachable areas. Starting with the high-up door to the right, inside, Samanosuke finds the Time Folder's core. After defeating the enemies inside and picking up Time Lab 4, Samanosuke enters the Time Folder, arriving at a parallel version of Paris's Arc de Triomphe. Just like in the first mission, Samanosuke enters the Arc and climbs up through the exhibition hall to the rooftop. But this time, instead of a giant robot, he faces several tough Genma. They take a while to defeat, but once they're dead, Samanosuke finds the red key in a chest at the back. Using the time folder, he returns to Mont-Saint-Michel once again. Back at the castle, Samanosuke sends the red key to Jacques, who then heads back to the red door he couldn't open earlier. Inside, Jacques sees Genma is enslaving people to work, with the same female Genma from before overseeing them. After she leaves, Jacques frees the prisoners. What a move! As Jacques leaves, Heihachi reappears, informing him that there are more French prisoners in the storehouse. On the ground, Jacques finds a triangular key. Also, we can rescue other human slaves, who will reward us with items. Heading up, Jacques moves through the previous rooms where we came from, using an Oni firefly to descend to the lowest level and open the previously locked door next to the train with the triangular key. Inside, Jacques finds more prisoners. Suddenly, the castle starts to rumble, and the prisoners shout that the castle has awakened before fleeing. In the room, Jacques finds a Genma plant. Leave the room, Jacques fights some minor enemies before planting the Genma plant in the soil next to the castle. This is a great use of the 500-year gap between the two protagonists. Returning to the upper platform, Akko then traveled back to the present day once again. Now, 500 years later, the Genma plant Jacques planted has grown up on the side of the castle, allowing Samanosuke to descend to the lower level using it. At the lower level are two Zamo and the plant Genma guarding the door. Defeating them allows Samanosuke to enter the front door. Inside, Samanosuke finds a chest that's so old it's weathered away, and from it, he gets an iron gear. At this point, you probably know what's coming next. Samanosuke sends the iron gear to Jacques, who uses it to fix the gate mechanism he couldn't open earlier. Inside the big main gate is a church-like room where Jacques finds Vega's diary. After killing the plant monster in the center and entering the small door on the left, Jacques heads down a hallway into a small room. Suddenly, the door behind him locks. The front door is sealed with a puzzle, and wall traps begin spewing poisonous gas. Jacques then realizes he's been trapped and loses consciousness short after. Back in the present, Henri somehow senses his father is in danger again. What is going on with you, kid? And rushes toward the castle. Michel decides to help him after he explains, and the two set off to find Samanosuke and also try to help Jacques. This is where we get to control Michel. Again, hell yay. Honestly, I really love Michel and her gun. Near the castle gate, Michelle picks up a soul bracelet. Clearing out enemies with her gun is so much faster. Capcom should have just handed Samanosuke and Jacques some firearms too, and the Genma problem would be over in no time. The only catch here is that Michelle can't stay too far from Henri, meaning if you get too far ahead, you'll have to wait for him to catch up, which can be a bit annoying. They fight their way up to the platform where they find Samanosuke. After some discussion, Akko explains that Jacques is trapped in the basement of the nearby building. Michel and Henri charge in, while Samanosuke and Akko follow closely behind. Remember the dark realm I mentioned earlier? Now's the time to enter it with Samanosuke. Both Jacques and Samanosuke can enter, and they'll get different rewards. But it's not worth stressing about in your first playthrough. It's really tough. Just have Samanosuke enter to grab the purple vest, which affects the ending. You can get other items in the second playthrough when you're more experienced. After getting the purple vest, Samanosuke enters the church room and heads to the basement, finding that Henri has managed to solve the puzzle. This kid's something else. A real MVP. Through some time travel telepathy magic, Henri is able to communicate the puzzle solution to Jacques. I'm not entirely sure how they're communicating either, but let's just roll with it. Controlling Jacques, we follow Henri's instructions, which requires some memory skills. If your memory is shaky, just record the answer with your phone. After rescuing Jacques, we cut back to the present, where Michel, Henri, and Samanosuke sees Ranmaru on the screen. He taunts them, saying he's planning to activate the time machine at the Eiffel Tower. Suddenly, the castle begins to explode, and the three rush to escape. Outside, a Gertrude that's been sleeping for 500 years appears and knocks out Michel. This triggers a boss fight, and the strategy is the same as the first fight at the undersea temple. Just keep dodging, and you'll take down the little puppy eventually. After the battle, Michel and Henri embrace, and Henri tells Akko to tell Jacques to marry Michel.
To marry Michelle.
You know, at this point, I'm convinced that this little bastard just wants a hot stepmom. With the castle starting to collapse, the three jumps into their car and speeds away, Fast and Furious style, escaping Mont-Saint-Michel just in time. Back to Jacques, just when he and Akko are celebrating the idea that Jacques can now marry Michel, the castle starts to rumble, and it's time to escape. Heading through the door they just unlocked, Jacques defeats the enemies inside and picks up Fortress 1, entering the small door to the left. Inside, Jacques sees the same female Genma preparing to leave Mont-Saint-Michel on some sort of Japanese castle ship hybrid. At the last moment, Jacques uses his whip to hook onto the flying castle and is pulled up into the air. The design of this flying castle is something else, a massive Genma insect combined with a traditional Japanese castle. But the weirdest part is the cannon at the front, which, instead of firing cannonballs, it shoots laser-like energy beam, instantly destroying Mont-Saint-Michel. There are so many things wrong here that I don't even know where to begin. With this kind of technology, why are the Genma soldiers still using swords? At least arm your soldiers with guns for f***'s sake. Time passes and the castle flies all the way to Japan. Really? That fast? Jacques gets thrown off by one of the castle's landing legs, tumbling into the snowy ground and passing out. A while later, Akko brings Samanosuke and Heihachi from this era. Samanosuke explains that Heihachi is not an enemy, and they are currently at Lake Biwa in Japan. Heihachi mentions that he was forced to help the Genma. With the misunderstanding cleared, Samanosuke decides to search for the Oni army orb, which can summon the Oni army. Jacques suggests that Heihachi infiltrate Azuchi Castle, to which Heihachi reluctantly agrees. Why does it almost feel like he's shy about it?
I was hoping I could stay with you, but I can follow an order.
Anyway, Heihachi heads off on his own to Azuchi Castle, leaving Jacques and Samanosuke to proceed together. They reach the frozen lake and use the Oni Firefly and ice platform under their feet to glide across the ice. Here, you need to avoid crashing into ice pillars, as doing so will cause the ice platform to break. Moving forward, they reach a platform where they find the Lake Biwa map. Continuing on, they finally reach the shore in front of a massive Japanese structure. Jacques heads inside, but the door slams shut behind him, separating him from Samanosuke once again. I can understand Jacques not being able to open the door, but why can't Akko just fly out? The gap is obviously big enough. Anyway, Jacques decides to explore the interior while Samanosuke investigates the exterior. Inside, Jacques encounters several colored doors and colored Oni Firefly switches, requiring him to hit the red switch to open the red door, then hit the blue switch inside the red room to open the blue door, all within a time limit. The trick is to get through the blue door before the red one closes. This part isn't particularly difficult, but the back and forth is tedious and requires quick movements. After entering the first blue door we saw, Jacques picks up the Oni army book and releases an Oni Firefly. Returning to the red room, he uses the Oni Firefly to navigate deeper, pulling the yellow Firefly switch, and then goes back to the room to pull the blue switch, entering the blue door and quickly getting through to the yellow door before time runs out. Finally, this section is done. Seriously, the puzzle solving in this game can be too much sometimes. In the yellow room, Jacques smashes a painting, revealing a hole on the floor that he can jump down into. It feels a lot like Silent Hill here. In the underground area, Jacques first encounters two Dongor. After defeating them, he finds the long sought after Oni army orb in the mouth of a statue. With the Oni army orb in hand, Jacques and Samanosuke head to Azuchi Castle, where they battle the Genma army. Using the power of the Oni army orb, Samanosuke summons a massive Oni army to join the fight. I have to say, this part is pretty epic. Countless Oni and Genma soldiers clashing in battle. Meanwhile, Jacques charges in alone. This section is perfect for practicing Isen and Isen's combos, with so many basic enemies providing great opportunities to practice your timing and button rhythm. Plus, the soul rewards are insane. I left here with Jacques absorbing 34 bars of souls. Entering the main gate, fights through Azuchi Castle's grounds to the castle door. Inside, he finds Heihachi battling Genma. After a brief conversation, they are interrupted by Ranmaru. Enraged by Ranmaru, Heihachi chases after him, telling Jacques that the elevator leads straight to Nobunaga. But, of course, nothing's ever that simple. Taking the elevator up, Jacques first finds the Azuchi Castle map. Going through a broken wall, he reaches the castle's rooftop, where he finds the Vassal book. Using an Oni Firefly, Jacques makes his way to an even higher rooftop, where he is confronted by Marcellus, a mini-boss for this level. I don't know if it's just me, but Marcellus seems tougher here. After defeating him, Jacques enters the castle again through another broken wall and heads straight to the door at the end. Inside, he finds the big female Genma from before. She reveals herself to be Nobunaga's wife and a Genma princess. Her name is Vega Donna, by the way. This boss fight is moderately challenging. The difficulty lies in the fact that most attacks can't hit her, and she can shoot paralyzing arrows. If you get hit, it's almost certain death. It's best to challenge this boss after mastering Isen or learning her attack pattern. Upon her defeat, Vega Donna romantically says that she wishes to die in Nobunaga's arms. Conveniently, a ladder drops down from the ceiling, which Jacques climbs to find Heihachi, who is greatly injured. Heihachi tells them he fell into Ranmalu's trap and that Nobunaga isn't here. He's at Honnoji Temple. Jacques asks Akko to go to the modern era and tell everyone that the final battle is going to happen soon. Back in the present, Samanosuke and the crew arrive at the Eiffel Tower. After Akko relays everything that happened in the past, Samanosuke decides to destroy the time machine in this era to prevent Nobunaga from reaching here if Jacques fails. They enter the Eiffel Tower, activate the elevator, and begin their ascent. Halfway up, several Genma burst in, stopping the elevator. After taking care of them, the only way forward is to climb out of the elevator and head to the top of the tower on foot. This climbing section is an absolute pain. Not only are there lots of Dorabazu rolling towards you like wrecking balls, but unstable time rifts also appear on the ground. If you stay in one too long, you get sent all the way back to the beginning of this section, so be very careful. Midway up, Guildenstern, the robot boss from the first level, shows up again. By now, you should have enough experience to easily take care of him. After defeating Guildenstern, head to the back of the left room to destroy the lightning generator, then move up from the boss area to continue your ascent. As you keep climbing and fighting through waves of enemies, be careful to avoid the time rifts. You eventually reach an elevator that takes you to the top level of the Eiffel Tower. Here, you find Time-Lapse 6 and open the elevator, only to be greeted by a Dodeco. I managed to take him out instantly with an Isen. Very cool. Taking the elevator up, you reach a save point, and just ahead is the now Genma enhanced Ranmalu. It's time for the final showdown with this guy. Ranmalu, obsessed with bringing Nobunaga into the present, stands in front of the time machine and attacks us.
Still alive, Samanosuke? Well, whatever. We are ready to welcome our lord.
I won't permit it.
In this final form, Ranmalu is faster, stronger, and many attacks simply don't work against him. The best way to beat him is to wait for his charge attack and counter it with a magic weapon attack, or just use Isen, which is the fastest and most effective method.
Come on!
After a series of clashes, Ranmalu is finally dead. Or is he? Before losing consciousness, Ranmalu activates the time machine, and no matter how much Samanosuke attacks, it won't stop. That's when Akko steps in. Samanosuke tells her to do whatever it takes to stop Nobunaga, so Akko warps back to the past to find Jacques. In the past, at Honnoji Temple, we're thrown back into the opening scene of the game. But this time, alongside the Samanosuke of this era, Jacques is there too. Together, they lead the forces into Honnoji Temple. Inside the temple, the first half is the same as before, just clearing out enemies on the way up. Once they reach the platform, we get a CG cutscene. This time era's Ranmalu comes out of Honnoji Temple, trying to stop their advance any further. Seeking revenge for Heihachi, Jacques takes on Ranmalu alone. In the cutscene, Jacques is invincible. He stylishly takes down Ranmalu, knocking him off the building to his death. The Ranmalu we struggled so hard to fight in gameplay is now dead, just like this. With Ranmalu out of the way, the duo heads into Honnoji Temple to face Nobunaga. Climbing the stairs, they enter the gates, and the real showdown begins. From a brief exchange, it's clear that this isn't the first time someone has tried to take down Nobunaga. And by the way, this version of Nobunaga looks like Dracula. Very cool. In the cutscene, we see that Samanosuke of this era doesn't seem to be using his full strength. After a few moves, he's easily knocked down by Nobunaga. Now it's our turn to fight. Nobunaga is incredibly powerful. He can parry most attacks and can even perform Isen on you, dealing massive damage. He also has both ranged and melee attacks, making him a formidable opponent. To beat him, you can use the only firefly in the room to leap behind him and attack, or you can attack simultaneously as he strikes. Either way, it's going to take a while, unless you're really skilled with Isen, which can speed things up significantly. After defeating Nobunaga, Jacques helps up this era's Samanosuke, but suddenly Jacques starts to glow. The time machine has activated, and he's being pulled back to present-day Paris. After saying farewell to Samanosuke, Jacques stands in the time sphere, waiting to be transported. Suddenly, Nobunaga, who we thought was defeated, stands up and strikes Samanosuke down, killing him with a sword.
Samanosuke! Samanosuke!
At the foot of the Eiffel Tower, Jacques, Henri, and Michel finally reunite, hugging each other in relief. Knowing what happened in the past, Samanosuke decides to take on Nobunaga in a final battle alone. As he begins to glow, ready to be transported back to feudal Japan, he says his goodbyes.
I'm happy for you, Henri.
Samanosuke.
Treat your new mother well. The three of you will make a good family.
Yeah.
Thank you. I'll never forget you.
Just as he's about to leave, Jacques stops him, as if he has something important to say. At this point, I really understand the bond between Samanosuke and Jacques, and I was expecting Jacques to say something heartfelt. Instead, he says,
Kick his ass.
"Okay, Jacques, I respect that. Let's go kick his ass." But just as Samanosuke is transported back to the past, and Jacques, Henri, and Michel start to leave, this era's Ranmalu, who somehow isn't dead, rushes at them and strikes Henri down with a sword. In a big rage, Jacques attacks Ranmalu with his whip, finally killing him for good. If I were Ranmalu, I would have targeted Jacques, not his son. I mean, if Frieza had killed Goku instead of Krillin back then, things would have turned out a lot differently. Holding Henri's lifeless body, Jacques doesn't know what to do until the Oni gauntlet on his arm suddenly starts glowing, using its power to revive Henri.
Papa?
Henri! Henri! Henri!
The Oni gauntlet then vanishes from Jacques' arm, and the three embrace once more. Back in the past, Samanosuke returns to Honnoji for one final confrontation with Nobunaga, determined to defeat him once and for all. Entering the main hall, Samanosuke finds the dead body of the Samanosuke from this timeline. He places his Oni gauntlet against the deceased Samanosuke's Oni gauntlet, absorbing extra souls. Samanosuke then begins to glow, his hair turning white, his skin becoming dark green, and his eyes turning amber, finally transforming into the true Onimusha, the demon hunter. Just like the another Capcom video game series, Nobunaga has three phases in this final battle. First is his semi-human form. In this stage, Nobunaga can't deal any damage to us, and we can take him down pretty quickly. Just as he is about to fall, Nobunaga suddenly stands up, telling Samanosuke he's not done yet.
I'm not done yet.
And transforms the surrounding environment into an isolated island made of bones. Nobunaga himself abandoned his human form entirely, becoming a full-blown Genma. For some reason, he looks like a villain straight out of Doom. In his second phase, Nobunaga primarily used 4 floating eye-like objects to attack. When we try to attack Nobunaga, these eyes shield him from damage and dropping special souls as they are destroyed. Absorbing the souls allows us to use magic attacks. We need to repeatedly destroy these 4 eyes before we can directly damage Nobunaga and push him to his final phase. In the last phase, Nobunaga grows fiery hair and use flame-based attacks both at range and up close. At this point, there's no need to save healing items. Just keep your health up, dodge the fireballs, and use magic attacks. The final form of Nobunaga goes down fairly quickly if you stay aggressive and keep healing. After the boss fight ends, Nobunaga's body slowly turns into black smoke. Samanosuke uses his Oni gauntlet to absorb the smoke, drawing Nobunaga into the gauntlet and seal him for good. And with that, the game finally comes to an end.
Oh boy! We finally beat him, Samanosuke!
I kept my promise to you, Jacques, and to the Oni clan.
Samanosuke, we've got to scram!
In the normal ending, Samanosuke is sitting by the river when Akko suddenly appears and asks what he's doing. The two then walk up the road, heading into the distance as the game ends, with the narrator saying things.
But a new journey has already begun.
Oh, did you think this is the only ending? Of course not. If you collect all of Akko's vests and upgrade every one of them to the maximum level, you'll trigger the true ending at the finale. This ending begins the same way as the normal one. Samanosuke is sitting by the river, but then Akko flies over and stands in the water, confessing her feelings to Samanosuke.
I decided to stay with Samanosuke forever and ever. What do you say to that?
I say, do as you please.
That's no answer. Do you want me to stay with you or not?
I don't know.
Honestly, this scene is pretty wild even by today's standards. I was blown away the first time I saw it. Samanosuke responds by saying he's never had those kinds of thoughts before. And I was thinking, isn't Akko, well, a little too small for Samanosuke? And just as I had that thought, Akko suddenly grows in size, becoming about as big as a little girl. She asks Samanosuke again what he thinks of her.
I can see that. Now all you need is a boyfriend.
This voice acting, oh my god, is so cringe. But as a samurai devoted solely to his country and people, Samanosuke is utterly didn't understand her meaning at all. In the end, Akko has Samanosuke place a flower she picked in her hair, and the two continue walking forward as the game ends with the narrator saying things. All I can say is, good job Samanosuke. Even though she's bigger now, agreeing to be her boyfriend would definitely have the FBI knocking at your door soon. And that's the end of the game. Of course, there's a post-credits cutscene, but it's not particularly important. After finishing the game for the first time, several extra modes are unlocked, such as shooting mode and Isen mode. Players who enjoy a challenge can give these new modes a try. While there was another Onimusha game afterward, as well as an HD remaster, neither of them made as big of an impact as Onimusha 3. Overall, the dual-star protagonist setup played a decisive role in boosting the game's popularity, and the fully 3D environment made the visuals even more polished. Whether the Onimusha series truly stands as one of Capcom's flagship franchises is ultimately subjective. Some say yes, others disagree. What do you think? Feel free to leave your thoughts in a comment, and I will see you in the next video.